All right. All right. Welcome to the Hall of Fame Fatherhood podcast. I'm your host, Steve Mistovich. And today I'm joined by Matt Halson. Matt is a husband, father of four, and a men's coach down in New Zealand. Right, New Zealand, right?
Australia.
Australia. Okay. And
Awesome.
so thanks for joining me today, Matt.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, so want to bring you on. We have a connection, and we were part of the Uncivilized Nation together at one point, and you know, just looking at your content, I'd come across your feed, and your I guess maybe mission statement is, you're building a world of men that look in the mirror and respect who's looking back. And for me personally, like respect has been a big thing. Uh, so that's why I wanted to bring you on, talk about what you do, how you help fathers in that area, and especially in regards to men being fathers. Uh, so that's what we'll dive into today, and so so I wanted to lead off on your website. It says, "From a young age, I rebelled against the world, and I grew up not knowing what a good man was." The first part of that, like, what did you rebel against?
Oh man, pretty much everything I could. I found every rule possible and I tried to go against it. If someone said go left, I would try and go right. It was every which way possible. I was just trying to create my own path through life. It's like I don't want what people are telling me I have to have. I want something different from all of that. So that was my rebellion. It was in a lot of ways it was a very self-destructive path for a long time. Now I found a way to nurture that into a very, very constructive and healing and healthy path. But to start with, it wasn't, and it looked like a lot of underage drinking and smoking from 13, 14 years old. My network of role models were all 20, 21-year-old guys that were drug users, drug dealers, drove
Mm.
drunk, that kind of thing. So that was what I had to emulate my behavior on. That's sort of what my experience of growing up and looking to role models were. So I do have a father. He's still around. My mum and him are still married. He was injured in a workplace accident when I was really young. So I lost a lot of that one-on-one connection, and that desire for bonding with him was removed from our family life for a very
Mm.
long time, really in those like critical young adult years. And once I hit that teenage year, I've been forced for so long to do things that I didn't want to do, because dad couldn't look after me because he was still sick all the time. I had to go on a lot of things with my sisters that they wanted to do, and I was left to my own devices. So I became hyper independent. But then I got to this 13 years old and I'm like, I've got no sense of identity. How do I find this sense of identity? So I pretty much went, well, I just need to reject everything. So I got into lots of arguments at school. I was disruptive at school. I would still say I was a good student if I had the right teacher, and this is where like the respect thing started. I knew from a young age that in my eyes, respect was earned, not given. And we were raised, I was told, like, respect your elders, you've got to show respect to your parents and all this stuff. I'm like, well, why should I have to respect anyone that isn't going to show respect to me?
Mm.
So that was sort of this early benchmark that became a super self-destructive behavior of like, if you give me shit, I'm just going to dump it all straight back on top of you. And that was sort of what my attitude through a lot of my young teenage years were, especially through high school, in my friends circles and stuff. I struggled with that, like just trying to figure out who the fuck I was and where I wanted to be,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So that was sort of
Yeah.
just behind that um, rejection of the world was like, what do I want? And what is it? How do I get that for me? And it's a very, very long path that I've had to walk to start to really figure out what that looks like.
Yeah. So would you say that like if I'm hearing you correctly, like your rebellion maybe like stem from like your relationship with your father and like trying to find like the masculinity, you know, that maybe he wasn't able to show or model for you because of, maybe what happened to him? Am I thinking about that right? Or
Um, it's probably not as straightforward as that. I've done a lot of therapy in later years, particularly the last 2 years. And what I've sort of noticed or I've unpacked from a lot of that is there was a multitude of things that happened when I was a kid. So I effectively lost my dad without losing my dad.
Mhm.
So I didn't have that really good connection with him because he was physically incapable of being present because he would get sick so frequently. I did still spend one-on-one time with my dad, and that was very much like based in how we do things. So it was a lot of traditional masculine things, like we'd cut firewood, we'd go fishing, we'd do those things. But the communication that I needed wasn't really where it needed to be. So I didn't sort of learn a lot of the aspects of like what a good, well-rounded, grounded man does because of the way my parents were in their relationship, where everything was kept like it was this saying like adult problems stay as adult problems. We don't talk to the kids about it. So I never learned how to navigate adult problems. So when I hit 13 and all these problems started to come up, all I knew how to do was be angry and be aggressive towards it. So that was sort of my attitude, fixing if something was a problem, rather than being quiet and not talking about it, which is sort of what I picked up from my parents' relationship. I went the opposite route. It's like, I need to be loud. I need to get rid of it. It needs to be destroyed and it needs to move on. So that's sort of where my tactics came from. It was, again, that's like a rejection, right? So
right.
this is how my parents like behaved. I didn't want to be this. So I went like polar opposite. I just went, I reject what you guys did. I'm going to do this instead. And all that was very much subconscious level. I wasn't actively choosing to do it. It's just the way I responded to it.
Mhm.
I would also say that not having a sense of self was a big thing for me as well. So when I did get dragged to a lot of other events like that my sisters went to and did all that, and I asked, like, there were things I wanted to do, like boxing, and I wanted to get into shooting guns and archery and all these things, and there wasn't really time or place or space for that within our family dynamic, or at least it wasn't created for me. And in that, I got to that age again, and I was like, well, I don't even know who the fuck I am. Like, I've not been able to do anything that I want to do, and I want to do all these things. And because I wasn't allowed to get it, my answer was to let's just tear apart from it. So it's like I need to take my independence to that next level and just, again, reject everything that tells me who I need to be or who I want to be and go down this path. So I would definitely say that it's a bit of a complicated relationship pattern with my parents in lots of different ways. And that's not to criticize my parents in any way either. Dad was sick. There was nothing he could do about that. He took all the medications, all the tablets, did everything the doctors had said to do, and he would just get sick frequently all the time. So that was out of his control. And my mum did the best she could. She never grew up as a teenage boy, so she didn't know how to teach or to help a teenage boy that well. So, they did what they could with the tools they had. Unfortunately, I was left wanting in that area. So I had to then work that out in the teenage years. And who did I look to? I looked to these 20, 21-year-old boys going, well, they're manly, so that's what I need to do.
Well, thank you for, being willing to dive into that. And, that's personal stuff and I going there, I appreciate it. So when did you like start to turn a corner and realize, okay, this is, unhealthy, and, what did that transition look like?
This is where parenthood comes into it for me. So all that teenage years was very much the same pattern. I argued with people a lot. I argued with my teachers. I still did pretty well in school because I always knew that there was something more to me than, being a complete delinquent and dropping out of school. It's like I still wanted to achieve things in life, and I knew that I had to do schooling to get there. I've been in a relationship since I was 16. We had our first child when we were 23, right as I finished my apprenticeship as an electrician. And that was that point where I realized that, oh shit, how the fuck do I show up as a good man? Because what I'm doing isn't that. I'm not a good man the way I currently stand. Like, yes, I've got a good job and I work my ass off and all that, but it's like my relationship's not the best. My communication's not the best. I'm not that healthy. I'm not mentally that well. So how do I show up and show this little human being what a good man actually is? And that's where I talk about that man in the mirror. There was a defining moment when she was born, when she was less than one. So in that first year where everything was chaotic, she had colic, so she wouldn't sleep. She had to be held upright and bounced all the time. It was really, really challenging time for me and my wife. And I remember just one day looking in the mirror in the bathroom, this shitty 2-bedroom unit we were living in, and just going, who the fuck are you to be raising this kid? Like, look at yourself, you're overweight, you're not healthy, you don't eat right, you binge eat, you sit there and watch too much fucking TV. Here's all this list of things. So I was really beating myself up about it, going, you're not worth respecting the way you are. And rather than taking that and saying, well, there's nothing I can do about that, it just is the way it is, I went, I need to find out what I need to do to be the best man that I can be for my daughter. So not just to be the best father, but to be the best man, because I knew full well she was going to grow up and get into her 20s one day, and she's going to go and get married. And the man that she looks for, she's going to look at me and how I raised her, how I was as a father and as a man, and she's going to hold whoever she dates and sort of compare that. And I was like, well, I don't want her to date anyone that's remotely like me at the moment. So I need to fix myself. I need to work on myself. I need growth so that I can show up the best way possible. So that's where my entire journey started from there. And it sort of was really challenging for a while, just trying to find information. This is in 2013, 2014.
Okay.
And it's like, there wasn't that much, compared to now. You look up masculinity, you look up men's coaching, you look up all that stuff. There's a heap of information available now, but back then there was not much. And, I didn't even know to really search the right terms. It's like, how do I improve? And you find all these 10 ways to be a better man. And
yeah,
you'd research it and you're just like, well, this is telling me how to be a better man for other people. This is telling me how to please other people and do what's best so that other people like me more. It's like, that's not what I'm after. I'm after, how do I be a good man? That was all. And that was really hard to find. So
do you remember what the first book or, the first thing that you came across, what was that?
I think it sort of started around I can't remember sort of anything exactly. I know there was a lot of Art of Manliness. Okay. Again, I'm not sure exactly on the dates, but I know I found him very early on. I found guys like Ryan Michler very early on. That might have been within that first sort of 2 or 3 year period. But then probably the first book that started to make sense for me as far as developing a core set of manly principles was The Way of Men by Jack Donovan.
Okay.
That was probably the first book I found, and I went, oh, here's some really clear, solid shit that I can actually base myself off of. So I took that, and then I started to read lots of other books, and I found quite a few that were more religious. I'm not a religious person, but the information that were in those books, like Wild at Heart by John Eldridge, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men, amongst a few other ones, that had really, really good principles in it that I started to apply. I started to draw down from them, and watching and listening to guys like Ryan Michler talk and all that, and then found Jocko Willink I think that was around 2017. So you can see how it's it was a really, really slow process of me just trying to find stuff. And then I got to this point around 2017, 2018, where I was embodying a lot of these things. Like I was training, I was trying to be a better leader, I was doing all this work, but I realized that there was still something missing. There were still things that were making me feel lost or directionless. And it's like, well, I've got all these principles and things to follow, but there's something that's missing from this. You know, my relationship still is struggling. Like we still fight a lot. I'm still not that connected with my kids. Even though I'm showing up as a much better man than I was, I still feel like there's something missing.
Mm.
And my relationship deteriorated quite a lot with me being stubborn and me thinking that everything I was doing was right because I digested all this information and it told me that do these things, you're a good man. And I couldn't figure out why doing these things and being a good man was still causing all this trouble in my life.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I owned the fact that I was neglecting myself at that point. I'm doing all these things to make myself look like a better man. I'm not doing the work that actually makes me a better man, that makes me more grounded, makes me more compassionate, makes me more empathetic, makes me more emotionally intelligent and emotionally in control. And that's when I found Traver Boehm's book, Man Uncivilized. I think it was around 2018. I found that, 2019, somewhere around there. And that was like oh shit, this is the missing part for me.
Mm.
This is the part that ties it all together. It's like I got all the primal stuff. I got all this masculine stuff down pat, but I had no idea how to regulate my emotions or to regulate my pain or to talk efficiently about how I was feeling and how I was coping with day to day. It was very much still the shut up and get back to work. And that was no longer working for me. That was a condition that I was raised with that no longer served me. So I had to go then start the process of getting rid of that and embodying a much lighter, more grounded, more compassionate, much more directed and purpose-oriented man. And that's sort of been the last, 4 or 5 years of my work. And that's the work that I now coach other men through.
When you say grounded, can you expand on that a little bit?
So for me, being a grounded man means emotionally I'm regulated. So I'm doing the work that I need to do so that I'm not getting real snappy with my wife. I'm not getting real snappy at work. I'm not getting real snappy with my kids. I am calm. I can absorb more information. I can handle the emotions of other people. So I can handle the emotions of my 8-year-old. I can handle the emotions of my 3-year-old and my wife and other people in my vicinity. But I can also breathe through the difficulties as they come up. So I'm actively choosing to clear my mind as best I can so that I can be present. So to me, being grounded and being present are kind of enmeshed together. So it's like for me to be present with someone, my to-do list needs to be taken care of or it needs to be dealt with and it needs to be, I know that I've got it written down in detail. I'm not going to forget anything or I've done enough of it that I can be super present here and now without thinking about all these other things that I need to be doing or things that I should be doing or anything like that. So to me, that's that grounded presence. It's the being able to talk clearly and calmly and maintain eye contact and really hear what other people have to say. So not just talking and then listening so that you can talk again, but really listening to what other people have to say and then responding to that because we tend to cut people off and we miss things when we're not grounded. We very much want to have our opinion or have our say on things, and we don't always open ourselves up and allow ourselves to receive from other people. And when we do that, we can lose out in some pretty big ways.
No, I like that explanation. I think that encompasses it, and defines it very well. And I know that for me, like you mentioned, you're able to breathe through like whatever's going on. I know for me, when I get upset and whatever, like that's like the first thing to go is my breath is I'm holding it and I'm trying to yell or, control the situation. And so I'm not able to breathe. That's one thing I've noticed, in my journey, that's like the first thing to go. And what's when you are teetering on that edge, like how do you bring yourself back to that grounded space?
I think reset breaths is so much more powerful than people give them credit for. So it's like if I notice that I'm holding my breath, my diaphragm's jumping, there's that's a good opportunity for me just breathe and get some oxygen back in. And then what I like to do is see where I'm at. Because if I'm not breathing, then I'm triggered by something. Something's upset me. It's not what someone else is doing. It's something else. It's, when we find ourselves responding to something, it's nearly always an us problem. It's nearly always something that's triggering us, right? I'm not doing the best job of explaining it, but it could be a boundary that's been crossed that we've allowed to be crossed, and we're upset by that. It could be that we were not grounded enough before we entered a conversation, and then the energy in that conversation started to lift, and we're already in overwhelm because we didn't prepare ourselves to have that conversation to begin with. So when someone starts to rapid fire at us, they may start to attack us. That's where we can get fired. We can get fired up. We can put up the defenses, and we can go, right, I'm getting ready to attack back. It's like, okay, this is a me problem. This is me not holding space for the emotions of someone else, just because, especially our wives, it's like they don't necessarily mean all these things they're going to say. They're also hurt. So what's hurt them? And often that reflection back onto myself, it's like, I can't control how someone else is going to react to things. I can't control their emotions. I can't fix them. I can't do anything for them. What can I do? Is I can look at myself. I can change myself. So if I can breathe through it and I can just be open to receiving new information, I might find that, well, this whole thing has been caused because I was neglecting to do this. If my kids are screaming the house down and they're not listening to directions that I give them, okay, is there something that I've done that's led to this? And that might be I've spent too much time on my phone that day or that week. I've been working extra hours. I haven't been as present with the kids. When I've been home, it's like I get home, we cook dinner, and I'm getting you into bed. So they're lacking that one-on-one connection time with me. Well, that's not their fault. That's on me. That's my responsibility to make sure that I'm looking after my kids at an emotional level as well as at a physical level. So from there, it's like all this information can come, but we have to make that conscious decision to step into that space. We don't just get to arrive there. I mean, with practice and repetition, you sort of by default go there first. But even then, like there's definitely still times where I find myself getting real emotional and I'm like, oh, I want to attack, or I'll start to attack back and defend myself and defend my position. And I go, oh, shit, this is not going to be a productive conversation. I need to breathe. I need to take a step back, because that's what a leader does, and goes, all right, let's look at this at a bigger picture and see what's actually going on here, because whatever we're fighting about, odds are this isn't the actual problem. So, yeah, to me, it's that having that reset breath and that ability to just take a step back from it and just open your eyes, look a little bit wider, and always be prepared to look at yourself and where you've been dropping the ball.
Yeah, that makes me think. I think it was on Tuesday. Typically, I'm employed. I'm an employee at an electric utility company, and I try to get up early and like work on this stuff before work. And that morning, I didn't get up and slept in, and kind of had just a shitty day. Like everything kind of compounded on top of that, and then that night, my son was giving us a hard time about taking a bath and going to bed, and I don't want to, and I don't feel like it. And I felt myself teetering on that, like wanting to just yell and make him do it. And like I was able to create enough space where I didn't do that but I still had this inner turmoil because I'm like, I'm bitching at him because he's not doing something because he don't feel like it. But that very same day, I didn't do something that I needed to do because I didn't feel like it.
Mm.
It's like, okay, that kind of like released some pressure. And it was like, all right, that sucks, but
Yeah.
that's the truth of the matter. So it's not fun. It's not fun to do that, but it's
No,
necessary.
it still happens, right? Anyone that sort of says I never lose it or I never get too overwhelmed and too angry, especially towards kids. I got 4 kids. It's really hard to manage everyone's emotions because not everyone's at the same emotional level. Not everyone's going through the same emotions at the same time. Like things affect people differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certainly not sitting here saying to people that every time I breathe and I'm grounded and I'm calm. I'm not. I still blow a gasket here and there. I still yell more than I wish I would. But having the awareness when I do it, and then that gives me this space to go back and repair any damage that I may have done. If I did blow it, I need to go and apologize for that, and
Right.
I need to do my best to explain myself to my child. It's like they're not. I'm not above that, and they're definitely not below that. It's like if I blow a gasket, like they deserve an explanation for that. They
Mm-hmm.
deserve to know what's going on with me that led to me yelling at them or getting mad about them, not going and brushing their teeth when they've been asked to,
Right.
the 4th time in a row. It's like, it's like I could have just got up and gone, hey, how about I come and brush your teeth for you? I could have done that, but I was tired, I was being lazy, and I didn't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, I just got mad. I was just like, no, I've told you to go brush your teeth, go and brush your teeth. Maybe I raised my voice or whatever, but they don't they don't see things that way, right? They're off having
No.
fun. Sometimes it's like, I need you to get into bed because I need some quiet time. It's like, okay, well, what sits under that? And a lot of this it happens once you're out of the thick of it, right? You can't
Right.
always have these thoughts and process this stuff when you're in the thick of it. Sometimes you need to just take control of the situation, deal with it, then you can decompress and then you can go and drop in and be like, all right, why did I blow up the way that I did? It's like, oh man, I was supposed to get up and go to the gym this morning. I missed my alarm. I didn't get my meditation in. Then I went to work and they fucking changed the job I was supposed to be doing today. And it just rattled my entire day. I came home, the kids were really loud. I was overwhelmed and I just couldn't handle that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how do we manage that next time?
Right.
But you're not going to have that kind of a thought pattern when everything is just too much in your head. You can't. And to expect yourself to be able to do that every time is putting I believe, an unrealistic expectation on yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. You like when you said, asking them to brush their teeth for the 4th time in a row and they still don't want to. Like I heard in my head, like, you know, like my parents, generation, probably same with your parents, like, they need to respect what you say and they need to go do it when you tell them
Mm.
to. And, it's a respect issue. On one hand, I see where they're coming from. I see what they're pointing to. Like, how do you look at that situation? How do you handle that situation when you're grounded and centered and at your best, so to speak?
So I guess like two-part answer. So as far as the respect what I say goes, again, my opinion is it needs to be earned, not given. So I'm not going to demand respect from my kids. And then if I'm out of alignment with that, that means that I need to respect what they say. So if I ask them to do something and expect them to do it because I've asked them to do it, well, to make things fair, if they ask me to do something, I should then do it. And that's not always going to happen, right? So then you've got to try and find that balance of, sometimes there's going to be situations where it's like, you need to just do it because I've told you to do it. Because it's important that you learn this skill. You won't understand it now, but you'll understand it when you're much older. It's like I'm forever having battles with my kids about cleaning their rooms and cleaning their play spaces and stuff. It's forever a battle, man. Like every father and mother goes through the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how do I deal with that? And when I'm really calm and grounded and I'm present, I would ask them to do it and I would suggest, hey, I'll come and help you. How about we put some cleanup songs on or something and we'll make it a bit of fun? They'll do it then. And it does generally get done faster. But when I'm scattered, I'm off centered, I'm not grounded, and I haven't taken control and care of my own self needs, then I'm not as patient with it. I'm not as likely to offer to help because I've probably got too many other things I'm trying to get done. So I've overloaded my plate. And that's where I'm just going to be like, no, you just need to go and do it. And there's definitely a balance between telling kids to do things and knowing that they just need to develop the skill to do it and they need to develop the resilience to work through some problems when it comes to things they don't want to do. Like there's going to arise situations in life where you're expected to do something you don't necessarily want to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to raise my kids to think that you can always just walk away from that. It's like, right. Why is cleaning your house important? Well, I can see it as an adult why it's important because I've seen the show Hoarders and I've seen what happens when people clean their house, right? And how far off are we from enabling that kind of behavior in our kids? It's like, I don't want to enable negative behaviors in my kids.
Right.
How clean does it need to be? Not super clean. I'm not expecting an immaculate room, but I'm expecting you to put in some work and some effort to do it. Yes, I understand you don't like it. And often this will come down to me having that conversation with them and being like, hey, look, I know you don't like cleaning. I don't like cleaning either.
Yeah.
But do you think it's fair that I should have to clean your mess, but you don't have to help me clean the rest of the mess? So it's always trying to relate it back to like a give and a take and just getting them to understand as best I can that we are a family and we need to work together.
Right.
You know, or to be like, hey, you clean your bedroom and I'll clean this room. You know, so we're all still doing it. But I very rarely will like be sitting on the couch watching TV, yelling at my kids like, hey, you need to go clean the room. You need to go clean the playroom. It's like, no, when we're doing it, we're generally cleaning as a family.
Yeah.
So that everyone's putting in the effort. So I think that's my general thing on it is I try to explain the benefits as best I can. You know, I try to be as transparent and open with my kids as I can be. Sure, there are things that are really, really hard to explain to kids. And there's certainly some things that you don't want to be explaining to kids. So I try and meet them where they're at, meet them at their level as best I can.
Wonderful. No, I like that. I think that's good. The respect has to be reciprocal. I think that's the best way that they will learn to be respectful to their elders and the, adults and all that stuff. So let's kind of like sticking with the respect thing, but putting it more towards like your relationship with your wife. When you began this journey to become this new man, her support, is obviously vital to, making things work. How did that affect your relationship? How do you guys work that
out? Multitude of things. First thing, it was hard for her because she'd been let down a lot of times by things that I'd done or things that I hadn't done. So when I turned around and said, hey, I'm going to give this thing a try and hope that it works, she thought it was just more false promises. She's like, it's just going to be another thing you're going to do and nothing's going to change. And I would definitely say that in our situation, things got a bit worse before they got better. As I started to learn about holding space and, inquisitive questioning. So like asking her questions, seeking to understand was not something she was used to. So when I did it, she thought I was trying to put the blame on her. So a lot of our disagreements or arguments went south pretty fast. And it took a lot of time and effort and, to build that trust. Trust is consistent action over time. So I had to continuously show up and be asking things and seeking to understand and not pointing fingers. And that took a long time for her to come around to like, oh, I get it now. Like you're not looking to blame me. You're taking what I say and you're trying to figure out how to apply it in a way that matches with what you value as well. So then she was able to start to see it's like, oh, actually, there's not much negative in this. Like, it's not a women hating club. It's not, Matt's just gonna say, fuck me, and he's gonna go and do what he wants. It's like, no, this form of growth is very much about me, but whatever benefits it brings to me, it's going to bring to you as well and to my family. So I think that kind of answered the first part. I've failed. I can't remember what the second part of the question was. You can remind me of that.
Well, just I think you answered it more or
Okay.
less all. I mean, just the interaction between you two and how the journey to
Mm.
a healthier relationship and what that look like.
So that was the second part, was where we're at now. So now we rarely fight. We rarely have big disagreements because we're much more open and transparent about everything. Where I used to I would consciously choose to omit saying things to her because I worried about the fact that it was going to upset her, which meant that she was going to be rattled, and then we'd be going into a downward spiral, or anything like that. It's like, now I'm just going to tell her anyway. It's like, it's important that I can be transparent in our relationship. I can tell her what's going on for me. I can be vulnerable when I need to be vulnerable with her, and let her know when things are scaring me, depending on what it is, or when I'm really upset or heartbroken about something. So to say our communications improved would be a wild understatement. A wild understatement. She went from potentially like the biggest critic of me doing this kind of work and embodying much more of my emotional control. She was worried when I went and saw a therapist for the first time because she thought in her mind that the therapist was going to say that all my problems were caused by her. And I was like, well, I know that's not true. If that was the case, I'd be forcing you to go and see a therapist and I wouldn't be going,
Right.
but it's like, none of this work is about you. All of this work is about me. And then we take that and we go, how do I make this work better in my relationship? And it's like, when would being calm, being present, being emotionally aware and in control, and learning more about sex and health and intimacy and connection and communication, like, how would that ever be a bad thing in a relationship?
Mm-hmm.
It can't be. It could never be a bad thing. So
Yeah.
again, once I started to do it, and it was hard. Like, there was a lot of really, really hard conversations we had where I had to share things that I'd lied about or things that I'd misled about, and that was really challenging. But I did it anyway, and I kind of went, well, I can't continue to embody an authentic version of myself if I've still got these lies hanging over my head, all these things that I'm avoiding and not talking about. So I came clean on a bunch of things, and that was really challenging. Again, it broke the trust, but then from there, it was like, now it's just open communication. Like, you ask and I'll give you the answers. And then from there, trust was established at a much stronger level because she knew I was telling the truth. There was no mistruths, there was no half truths or anything like that. It's just like, you ask, I'll tell you. But be mindful with that, because you ask the right question. I mean, I'll always answer it as civilly and as respectfully as I can, but are you always going to hear what you want to hear? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's like, I'm not always going to put you first. I can't always put my kids first. I have to put myself first, because if I can't show up, again, as connected and grounded as I possibly can and looking after my own cup, I can't fill anyone else's. So I have to put myself first in a lot of ways. But overarchingly, I'm doing that to benefit my family the best that I can and to benefit my relationship the best that I can. So it's a funny little dichotomy.
Yeah, it is. Like, I think it's a meme of, it's like a father-son like silhouette, and like the son has a missing square and the father's like handing a square of him to like fill that hole. It's like, that's that's a powerful image. And it's like, what you're speaking to there is like, well, if you don't have the chips to give, like, how can you give something that you don't have? And it's like, if you,
Yeah.
if you don't have the emotional awareness, and you give the yelling instead of the emotionally controlled response, like, what's I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, what's the quality of the things that you're giving your wife and your kids? And I think that's what your work is, helping other men, and the work that you've done yourself is, I think, what it's about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You need to be able to bring the best version of you to the table as you can. You need to be able to do that, and there's a lot, like, that's a deep conversation as to what that actually looks like. But to take that meme a step further, it's like there's they're both full black. The son's got a square cut out, and the dad's passing him a square to fill that hole. What happens with a lot of fathers is we just keep cutting pieces out and giving them away. That's what we tend to do. This is what I did for a long time. And this is how I ended up in this position, being like, why has my life turned out like this? Why is my relationship not that good? Why am I yelling? Why am I always aggressive? I'm doing all this work. What's going on? And it was still very much like I was just giving pieces away. I was giving away too much of myself to my job. I was giving away too much of myself in what I was choosing to do with my spare time. I was watching too much TV. I was, always saying yes to going out and doing things that I didn't want to do, and not having good boundaries. So it's like, effectively, you're taking all these pieces out and you're never putting pieces back in. So you end up quite literally taking all the pieces out, and then you're standing there going, why do I feel so empty? Why do I feel so hollow? Why do I feel like I'm just floating? It's like, well, you're floating because you're not grounded. Yeah. Right? That's the very polar opposite of being grounded, is just floating around. It's like you're off in the clouds. You're just not here. You're not present. You're not emotionally available. You may not be physically available. So how do you fix that? Well, step one, get grounded. Like, start to just sit still and just be with yourself and get comfortable being with yourself. Then you can start to figure out how to replenish those pieces and what you need to do to replenish those pieces. And that's where boundaries come in. It's like, without boundaries, it's very difficult to start putting those pieces back into place, because you're always going to be seeking permission to do that. And that's where I need to put myself first. Like, if I need quiet time by myself away from everyone, I need to take steps to make sure I can do that, because I know that has that replenishing effect on me. And then when I come back, I'm much calmer, more grounded, I'm more present, I'm more available for the people that need me the most. So yeah, boundaries is massive. And that, I love that analogy of, like, we give till we're empty and we're hollow and we don't know where we're going. We don't know why we're going there. Our relationship's falling to pieces. We don't know why. So, man, you've painted a pretty clear picture. You're saying you're empty. It's because you've given all of yourself away. So this is the process of reestablishing who you are and really bringing forward that authentic vision of yourself. Because most of us have that vision in here of what we want to be and what we want our life to look like. But we don't even know how to take those first steps to achieve it. We don't even know where to start, because it can seem so damn overwhelming going, I've got all these things and all this beautiful vision for what I want my family life to look like, but I'm so stuck here and now that I don't even know where to start. And that's the work that I do. It's like, all right, let's start tearing you open and let's see what's actually inside, because it's all in there. So you may feel empty, but all of that is still in there, because that vision never leaves your mind.
Right, 100%. No, I think that's beautiful how you took that a little bit further with that analogy. So you work with men, and you help them find that man that they respect. Tell me about that. Expound on that.
So I think the best way to explain it is, I work with men that are ready to take that first step, that have identified, like, okay, my life's not going to change unless I change. So that's the first step for men to acknowledge within themselves that everything that they want and everything that they can have is in the palm of their hand already. but they need to be prepared to do something about it. So it takes commitment to self before you can even start any of this kind of journey for anyone. That was the case in my case, and it's the case in hundreds of thousands of men across the world's case. And then from there, the steps are, all right, we need to effectively unfuck ourselves because we've put ourselves in this position. We've fucked ourselves. We've locked ourselves up. We've emptied ourselves. We've caused all these issues in our life, for the most part, ourselves. So how do we come back from that? It's like, all right, this is going to be some deep internal work, man. This is going to be looking at you and where you're failing to show up. It's going to be looking at the things that you want that you don't currently have. So it's like taking that vision and we're going to extract that vision and then we're going to start to look at it. And then you're going to start to go, oh, that's like, I really like that vision. I love that vision. It's like, of course you do. It's your vision. You're going to love it. So how do you get there? And then we start looking at all the behaviors and the patterns that we've employed over the years that have stopped us from reaching that or have stopped us from taking the steps on that. So that's where we look at people-pleasing behaviors. We look at, poor boundaries. We look at poor communication. We look at our relationships with work, with our partners, with our friends, with the people around us. And then we start to look at things like purpose. We look at our values system as men, because having a set of values is probably one of the most important things you can have as a man and as a father, because that is the lens that you look at your life through. Mm-hmm. Without that, you don't really have a foundation. So you can be like, I have this vision. Okay, but how are you going to get there and still stay true to who you are at your core? Like, what does your authentic self look like on this entire journey getting there? Because, like, sure, you can get from A to B, but you'll still find yourself hollow if you've sacrificed all of your values along the way. It's like, if your ultimate vision is to be, the CEO of $1 billion company, and yet you're sitting there saying, well, family is my number one value, you're going to find yourself out of alignment pretty fucking quick there. Yeah. Because being the CEO of $1 billion business takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hours, a lot of work, a lot of additional learning, a lot of really, really hard decisions, and a lot of compromise. Are you prepared to do that and sacrifice that time and that quality of relationship with your family to get there? So, but if you don't understand that family is your value, when you're sitting there thinking in your heart, like, if I get this $1 billion CEO position, then my family's going to be better off. It's like, well, are they really? Because how are you going to get there? Mm-hmm. How are you going to get there and still have your family? So we take that value system, then you apply plan to that system. And then all of a sudden you've got like a roadmap, a blanket slate. Here's how you get there. It's like, there's where you want to go. And here's your core values that you're going to make sure you're in alignment with every day, all the way through that process. And you're going to take steps towards that passionate, purpose-filled life that you desire. And with that comes the excitement. That fire comes back and you start to go, oh shit, like I can see things starting to change and things starting to happen. And then it's all about momentum from there. Really about like build that momentum, take those steps, get it up to a point, and then you're just going to continue with it.
What's the, like, especially around like the men who are fathers that you work with, like, what's the biggest concern or challenge that they have or that you see?
A lot of the guys I've worked with have challenges in the presence department and the emotional control department. So a lot of it's around that, how do I be more grounded? How do I be more connected? How do I be more open and transparent? As far as like doing things, guys are great at doing things. Like, you give someone a to-do list and say, here, go and do these things, they'll go and get it done. It's the deeper emotional awareness, it's the deeper emotional connection that's the challenging part for a lot of men, because most of us have been raised to suppress a lot of that. Or the inverse of that is we've been suppressed on our masculine traits and we've been promoted more of the emotional state, which means we end up in this overly emotional, out of control, chaotic state, which ultimately has a similar effect. It just looks different.
Yeah, as somebody who's in that latter camp, I can attest to that. It doesn't. It's very disconnecting
Mm.
to be essentially blown by the wind. You know, your emotions are every which direction, and so
Who got you there?
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh, it's okay. I thought it lagged on me.
no, I'm just kind of thinking about what you said, and
Yeah.
uh, you know, the coaching world. You know, it seems like everybody is a coach, uh, but like hearing you speak and you know your experience and the work that you've done and the improvements that you made, like it's people like yourself that like give me hope that like progress is being made to kind of balance things out because they feel like they've been out of balance for a long time and there's no shortage of problems, especially in today's world. But seeing guys like yourself uh, focus on like the root of the problem, at least in my eyes, uh, it's just it's just good to see. It's very much needed, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. That's just kind of what hit me after you explained, you know, what you do and how you go about things.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's I think you're right. There's a lot of bullshit in the coaching world. There's a lot of um, and even when I came through doing coaching and stuff, there was a lot of talk about like, you don't have to have had all your shit sorted out to be a good coach and all the rest. But for me, I won't teach anything or I won't ask someone to do something that I haven't done myself or I wouldn't do myself. So, and the reason I do that is because for me, it's all about authenticity and transparency.
Mm-hmm.
So it's inauthentic for me to suggest someone, hey, I think you should go on an ayahuasca retreat. Well, I've never been on one. So I can't talk about that from experience. And if it's not within my realm of like my own experience, why would I talk about it?
Right.
Because then it's just all, it's information I've gathered from books and stuff. But the main thing with any kind of self-development work is not the information itself. It's what you do with it. So it's always about the action. And everything I teach is exactly that. It's the stuff that I did. And not only did I figure out how to develop myself into the man that I deeply wanted to be, I was able to do that while keeping my family together, which is in a lot of people's cases, that's not how it works out. So for a lot of men, they get into the self-development world after a divorce or after a separation. Same with a lot of females. They get out of a shitty relationship, then they get into spirituality, they get into personal development, they get into self-growth. And I could have ended up there, but that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to take that destructive route and tear my family to pieces. So I wanted my family to stay together, but I wanted to change who I was fundamentally as a man and bring forward the man that I deeply wanted to be. So I had to find out how to balance that. And that was a real challenge. And that's where, when I say you're going to have uncomfortable conversations in this work, if you're in a relationship, you are. Absolutely, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable. But what do we all know about being uncomfortable? And when we're feeling the stretch, when we're feeling that stretch and we're feeling uncomfortable, that's where the growth lies. Right. No one grows sitting on the couch doing nothing. No one does. The athlete that wants to get that 1% better is doing that extra 20, 30 minutes of training a day. Right. It's always about that bit extra, that little bit of a stretch. So it's, again, if you're going to do it, you have to commit yourself to it and you have to be prepared for some uncomfort, some discomfort. But I can tell you firsthand, it is absolutely worth every second of it. As hard as it was to do it, it's been absolutely worth every minute. Every one of those uncomfortable conversations I've had has been well worth it.
Beautiful. Now, like typically, uh, the last question that I ask any guest is, and is, how would you define a Hall of Fame father? And, I know, like you spoke of early on, like, you need to be the best man, not just the best father for your daughter. So, it's, don't get stuck on the fatherhood, but how would you define a Hall of Fame father?
I think what makes a man a good man and father is one who demonstrates positive values, walks the talk effectively. So what talks the talk and also walks the walk, not just, not to do what I say, not what I do. So it needs to be a man who's doing the work. But it also needs to be, in my eyes, to be a good father is you need to not project your own shit onto your kids. So you need to be in a place where you can celebrate the uniqueness of your own kids, and they're all going to be really individual and really unique. Don't force your kids into a box that you think that they should be in because you can see all this potential. It's like, no, don't cram your kids into any kind of a box. A good father leads their kids or guides their kids to establish their own box, to establish their own, because maybe they don't want to be in a box. Maybe they want to be in a circle or a cylinder or a hexagon. Maybe they want something completely different out of life. It's our job to guide them in a safe and efficient way to becoming the person that they deeply want to be. Because that's what I see as the root behind the pain of a lot of men and also the happiness of a lot of men is when we can walk and live through authenticity and being who we truly want to be. If you could ignore all the rules of society and just do exactly what you want to do and you walked and lived that life, would you be happy or would you be stuck and feeling controlled and empty, floating? And to me, that's what a fan father would be.
Love it. Matt, I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything that you would like to, leave the audience with? Anything you want to plug? Shoot away.
Yeah, man, it was a great call. I really appreciate you getting me on. It's good I love talking about this stuff. I get real passionate about it. Yeah, look, I guess the only things, if anyone wants to see or hear more of me, I'm on Instagram at Father of the Tribe AU with underscores between each word. My wife is on there as Mother of the Tribe, again with underscores. She's got quite a big following. She shows more of our family homeschooling life. And yeah, if you are at all interested in working with me, have a look at my page and we can go from there. That's about all I need to say, I think.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you, and have a great rest of the day.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, mate.